It's Arshishmita. You can start.
Yeah. A very welcoming Jai and good afternoon to all. I'm Archishmati Talwar, currently dedicated to pursuing my undergraduate studies in dentistry at Babasaheb Ambedkar Dental College and Research Center in Kolhapur.
Jai Bhim, everyone. I am Kshitij Mund, and I recently completed my master's degree in history from Savitribai Phule Pune University. Currently, I am working as an intern at Panthers for publication, where we are actively involved in establishing a community library in Nagpur named the Library of Emancipation. The objective of this project is to curate and stock literature addressing critical issues related to caste, religion, race, gender, sexuality, etc., and more. The library will be accessible and free for all.
We warmly welcome all the participants to the Online Ambedkar Intellectual Summit 2024, organized by Mr. Mangesh Daivale, the founder of the B.R. Ambedkar International Foundation, and Mr. Yogesh Maitre, writer and founder of the anti-caste publication house Panthers for Publication. This online summit is a quest to explore and uphold the core values of liberty, equality, and fraternity that Dr. Ambedkar stood for, and to remember him on his 133rd birth anniversary. The online talk is taking place on Zoom and is streaming live on Facebook page of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Karwa. I would urge all the participants to mute their microphones. They would be able to unmute themselves during question and answer session. Now, I would like to request my colleague Kshitij to introduce the speaker, Mr. Christophe Jaffrelot, who is joining us today from England.
Thank you, Arshishmita. Today, we are honored to have with us Dr. Christophe Jaffrelot, who is joining us to talk about the importance of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar for today. Introducing Professor Jaffrelot and his work within a short span of time is quite a challenge due to his vast body of work. As a scholar, he has been studying India for the past 40 years. He has authored numerous books and articles on topics such as caste politics and its history, Hindu nationalism, ethnic conflict, and South Asia, with a special focus on India and Pakistan. His latest book, Gujarat Under Modi, Laboratory of Today's India, was published this year in February. Personally, I refer to a lot of Professor Jaffrelot's book for my research. Professor Jaffrelot is a distinguished scholar and expert in Indian politics and sociology, with research interest in international development and politics. He currently holds the Avanta Chair and he is the Professor of Indian Politics and Sociology at the King's India Institute. Additionally, he serves as the research lead for the Global Institutes at the King's College London. He also teaches South Asian politics and history. He also teaches South Asian politics and history at Sciences Po, Paris, and is an overseas fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, which reflect his global impact and recognition in the field. He was director of the Center of International Studies at the Sciences Po between 2000 and 2008. He was awarded the Ramnath Goenka Award for Excellence for Commentary and Interpretative Writing in 2011. He is a contributing editor at the Caravan and also contributes to the columns of the Indian Express. He also works as a senior editor at the Hearst book series on comparative politics and international studies. And he's a regular commentator on Indian and Pakistani politics across different continents. Professor Jaffrelot has a PhD in political science from Sciences Po, an MA in history from the University of Paris, Sorbonne, and an advanced degree from the School for Advanced Studies in the Social Sciences. His contribution to academia, public discourse, and cross-cultural understanding are truly remarkable and worthy of admiration. I now invite Professor Jaffrelot to lead the final talk for the Online Ambedkar Intellectual Summit 2024. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. And of course, thank you for the invitation. And therefore, I need to thank Mangesh, who is, of course, very much instrumental in keeping this link, as well as Sandeep, who is also on the call. And thanks to whom my book on Ambedkar is now available in Marathi, which is, of course, a great addition to the other languages. It was available in, of course, French, English, and Hindi and Tamil. And now it's not only Marathi, but also Urdu and Malayalam. Anyway, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my PowerPoint, and you let me know if you cannot see it properly. I hope you can. What I'm going to do is to document the question you have asked me to deal with. Why is Dr. Ambedkar so important for today's India? Well, I think he is as important for India today as he was in the past, as he was as the architect of a democratic revolution that was supposed to go beyond politics. You know, when he mentioned this notion of a democratic revolution, Babasaheb Ambedkar systematically emphasizes that he is not interested in political democracy only. He wants social and economic democracy as well. And in my presentation today, I will cite him a lot because he is so crystal clear that there is no need to paraphrase him. You can just cite him, and it is enlightening you immediately. So the first quote I would like to cite is from a speech he delivered in 1943 at the All India Trade Union Workers Study Camp in Delhi, where he said, "Social and economic democracy are the tissues and the fiber of a political democracy. The tougher the tissue and the fiber, the greater the strength of the body. Democracy is another name for equality. Parliamentary democracy developed a passion for liberty. It never made even a nudging acquaintance with equality." Soon after, 13 years later, in May 1956, he said to the Voice of America, an important radio station at that time, "A democracy is more than a form of government. It is primarily a mode of associated living. The roots of democracy are to be searched in the social relationship, in the terms of associated life between the people who form a society." So when you have this starting point, the objectives are very clear. Nothing else but liberty, equality, and fraternity, in order, in particular, to emancipate the Dalits from the caste system. Because clearly fraternity needs to be added to liberty and equality if you want to go beyond purely political democracy. How to reach there? Well, Babasaheb had a very consistent trajectory. He started as an intellectual to study the problem, for understanding the problem fully. Then he turned to social reform, and he wanted to reform society at large, including his own community. So he started to fight for social and political rights. But that took him to another field, that is party politics and institutional politics, official politics. But as you all know, he finally decided to leave all this to convert to Buddhism. So for me, the relevance of all these attitudes, strategies remains very much there today. And if we want to understand the importance of Babasaheb Ambedkar's strategies today, you need to see what they were in the past, because they can certainly be replicated. They can certainly be the same. So first of all, you need to study, you need to understand what is the problem for solving the problem, you know? And he spent quite some time reading books. As you know, he had a huge collection of books. He started as a scholar. He is a scholar. I know many of my colleagues do not agree and look at him as a politician or at the most a statesman. I look at him as a scholar, first of all, who studied social sciences. He is a social scientist. You see him here as a student in the US and in London. By the way, I don't know if you saw the book we co-edited recently with Santosh and William Gould, Santosh Das and William Gould. The book is called Ambedkar in London. It will be published very soon in India. Rupa is doing the Indian edition. We've seen the cover. It's a question of weeks now. And I found it absolutely fascinating to immerse myself in an understanding of what Babasaheb did in London, reading at length the social scientists of the time, and doing, of course, a lot of research in economy, in the domain of economy, because he did a PhD in economy. Yeah, with the support of some Maharajas, including, of course, the Maharaja of Kolhapur. And this is something we always must remember, that he could climb the ladder with this outside support. The British, of course, helped him a lot. Some Maharajas also helped him a lot. And as a result, he became a symbol of knowledge, a man with degrees, a list of degrees that is unbeatable, really, to finally become a lawyer. What did he say as a scholar? Well, he said something very, very important. He said, in the caste system, we have a variant of what is inequality. And he says, well, it's not like the kind of equality you saw in Europe during the Middle Ages, with the aristocracy, the clerics, and then the third estate. It's not even what we saw in Russia before the 1917 revolution, where you had an urban and a rural proletariat. In both situations, you can have a revolution because you can amalgamate a majority. The third estate can make the 1789 revolution in France. The proletariat could make the 1917 revolution in Russia. In India, it's more difficult to have a revolution, because the kind of inequality you have is what he called graded inequality. And let me read this very long quote, but really illuminating quote, for making clear what he meant by that. He said, in a system of graded inequality, the aggrieved parties are not on a common level. This can happen only when they are only high and low. in a system of great inequality, they are the highest, the Brahmins. Below the highest are the higher, the Kshatriyas. Below the higher are those who are high, the Vaishya. Below the high are the low, Shudras. And below the low are those who are lower, the untouchables. All have a grievance against the highest and would like to bring about their downfall, but they will not combine. The higher is anxious to get rid of the highest, but does not wish to combine with the high. The low and the lower, lest they should reach this is level and be is equal. The high wants to overthrow the higher that is above him, but does not want to join hands with the low and the lower, lest they should rise to his status and become equal to him in rank. The low is anxious to pull down the highest, the higher, and the high, but he would not make a common cause with the lower for fear of the lower gaining higher status and becoming his equal. In the system of graded inequality, there is no such class as completely unprivileged class, except the one which is at the base of the social pyramid. The privileges of the rest are graded. Even the low is a privileged class as compared with the lower. Each class being privileged, every class is interested in maintaining the system. Wow, that's a great sociological analysis of why a revolution in a caste system is so complicated. And the first thing on the basis of this analysis he decided to do was to unite the untouchables first. Because he says this caste system among the untouchables has given rise to mutual rivalry and to jealousy, and it has made common action impossible. The caste system is not merely a division of labor, it is also a division of the laborers. This is, of course, the key sentence of this great book, well, lecture that he was supposed to give in 1935, Annihilation of Caste. How do you do that? How do you bring unity among Dalits in order to circumvent the graded inequality that is a recipe for status quo, social status quo? Well, to begin with, Babasaheb Ambedkar will start to fight as a social worker. And the first social movement that he initiates, the Baiskrit Itakarini Sabha, is explicitly subordinating social reform to education. You know, if you look at the objective of the organization, you see one, to promote the spread of education among the depressed classes by opening hostels or by employing such other means as they may seem necessary or desirable. Two, to promote the spread of culture among the depressed classes by opening libraries, social centers, and classes or study circles. By the way, this is what DMK, DK at that time, started to do before independence. Third, to advance and to improve the economic condition of the depressed classes by starting industrial and agricultural schools, and to represent the grievances of the depressed classes. So social reform meant to fight for rights. Among the fights that he focused first was the temple entry program. That was not something he pursued for too long, because he thought that that was a kind of subordination. To fight for entering the Hindu temples should not be the priority, because that was a reflection of Sanskritization, a reflection of some reverence for the Brahmins, the priests, those who were in charge of the temples. Another fight that he found much more important was to fight for access to water tank. And this is the famous 1927 Mahat Satyagraha. I used one of the photographs, one of the paintings presenting this Mahat Satyagraha as a cover for one of my versions of my biography of Dr. Ambedkar. Not only they took water, but they burned the Manusmriti on the same day, in the same satyagraha. After that, Babasaheb lost somewhat interest in social religious movements. And that was clear when he declared on the day of the big festival of Kondoba, how many generations of ours have worn themselves out by rubbing their foreheads on the steps of the god? But when did the god take pity on you? What big thing has he done for you? Generation after generation, you have been used to clean the village of its garbage, and God gave you the dead animals to eat. In spite of all that, God need not show you any pity. It is not this God that you worship. It is your ignorance. What does that mean? It means that, yeah, social reform should be a priority, but not for getting what the Hindu upper caste consider as the most important in Hinduism, and access to temple was one of them. So for promoting social reform, he turned to politics. And this is a very important shift, considering that if you want to change things truly, you need power. You need to get power. You know, in 33, when the turning point took place, he said, you have now a way of bringing about change and improvement in your life conditions. That way is through political action, through appropriate laws. You can make government provide for you what you are now denied: food, clothing, shelter, education. Hence, instead of resorting to rosary counting or prayer, you should now depend on the political path that will bring you liberation. The conflict hereafter will not be between the British and the Indians, but between the advanced classes of India and the backward classes. No borrowed or hired person who does not belong to your class can further your welfare by the least degree. You may rid yourself of internal division and organize yourself strongly and turn to politics. This is the new direction Babasaheb is taking in the 30s to conquer power. Well, that's something, of course, we know. He was very good at advocating the cause for his people politically vis-a-vis the British. The British listened to him. The British, of course, we are very impressed by him and considered that he was the spokesperson for the downtrodden. So he was, of course, audited by the Southborough Committee in 1919, by the Simon Commission in 1928, and more importantly, by the British during the roundtable conferences, from which resulted the Communal Award, a very important concession made by the British, who gave Dalits a separate electorate. To promote this separate electorate agenda that had to be transformed into seat reservations because of the Pune Pact, he built parties: the Independent Labour Party in 1936, the Scheduled Caste Federation 1942, the RPI after he died took shape in 1956. None of these parties could make any significant inroads. And therefore, he decided to fight with others to make partnerships. For instance, he said in 48, we must take advantage of the struggle between the two parties, Congress and Socialist, and maintaining our separate identity to cooperate with the one which will accept our conditions and thus derive the most benefit. Power is the key to social progress. He is repeating this. You need to get political power to make progress socially. And to join hands with Congress people or socialists is not opportunism. It's a form of pragmatism because the objective remains the same, the emancipation of the Dalits. You know, that this is exactly what Kanshiram will pursue, to join hands with parties which were not Dalit parties, was not a form of opportunism. It was a way to have access to power because power was a priority. So he could, after 1937, protest against Congress in spite of this philosophy, because there was a red line that he was not prepared to cross. And in September 38, he protested against the Industrial Disputes Bill, which was aimed at imposing a procedure of conciliation between the employers and the laborers in case of conflict, mostly in Mumbai, of course, Bombay. And the Congress government, a very conservative government, aided by B.G. Kerr, was justifying this measure by referring to the increasing number of strikes. So Ambedkar disputed this analysis and emerged as the defender of the right to strike. That was, of course, a fundamental freedom which he did not want to be curtailed at any cost. So he was prepared to join hands with Congress, with parties which were not Dalit parties, but of course, he was also prepared to fight them when they were antisocial. And the same thing with the British. That's a very important lesson that you need to learn from him. He had no inhibition. If joining hands with the British could help the Dalits, then why not? And in 1941, he joined the Defense Advisory Committee set up by the Viceroy to involve Indian leaders in the war effort and to give this forced participation of India in the conflict a greater legitimacy. He was absolutely clear with that. He had no problem supporting the British, provided they gave him and his people in return additional rights. By the way, this committee also comprised MC Raja, who was a much more moderate Dalit leader at that time. And after 1 year as member of the Defense Advisory Committee, he joined the Executive Council of the Viceroy, and he was the Labour member. He was, if you want, the first Labour minister that India saw. And he used this position for improving the condition of the Dalits, for improving the condition of all the workers at large. So a legislation was developed, including the Indian Trade Unions Amendment Bill, that made compulsory the recognition of a trade union in every enterprise, provided it fulfills certain conditions, particularly in terms of representation. So that's why you had in the textile mills of Bombay so strong red unions at the end of the British Raj. More importantly, in this position, he could force the British to introduce reservations in the public sector. So in November of 43, 8.33% of the posts of the public sector, of the bureaucracy, were reserved to scheduled caste. And of course, that was an emulation to what the Madras Presidency government had already introduced. And he could get a quota also in the Central Assembly. When he went to the south, when he went to Madras Presidency in 44 and met Periyar, by the way, he emphasized the importance of not only reservations in the bureaucracy, in the assemblies, including the Council of the State, the upper house of Parliament, but also in technical education. And he said that his project was to give access to this kind of education to 68,000 pupils. And in the same capacity as labor member, he indeed initiated another very important transformation, the Amendment Act, the Payment of Wages Amendment Act, and then the Factories Amendment Act, to regulate the work of women who had to work in mines at that time. And he wanted to improve the condition of the miners as a priority. So the legacy of Ambedkar is absolutely tremendous so far as social rights are concerned, so far as reservations are concerned. And that is because of his shift from party politics to more institutional forms of politics as a minister or as a member of the Viceroy Committee, first of all. Here is in this capacity when he was a member of the Viceroy's Committee. Then, after independence, of course, to collaborate with Congress made the same kind of sense. In August 47, Nehru made Ambedkar the law minister. Certainly, Mahatma Gandhi had insisted for the first government of India to be inclusive. So you had also Shyam Prasad Mukherjee, for instance, as minister at that time. He accepted because, as he said, in the first place, the offer was not subject to any condition. And secondly, it was easier to serve the interests of the scheduled caste from inside of the government than from outside. Well, from inside, what could he do? Well, he could, first of all, fight Patel, who was very conservative and very much against Dalits. If Dalits lost some of their rights in the Constitution of India, it was because of Patel. For instance, after the Pune Pact, there was a system of primaries, making sure that the Dalits who were contesting elections in reserve seats had been selected by Dalits only. That was lost because of Patel, who in the Constituent Assembly called on the Dalits to, I quote, forget what Dr. Ambedkar or his group have done. And he said also, Mr. Patel, I feel that the vast majority of the Hindu population wish you well. Without them, where will you be? Therefore, secure their confidence and forget that you are a scheduled caste. That was one of the reasons why reservations had to be diluted. Well, Babasaheb used his role as chairman of the drafting committee to counter the influence of Patel and others, including Rajendra Prasad, who was the president of the assembly. So, if none of the articles of the Constitution abolished caste, the discriminations based on religion, race, caste, sex, and birthplace were declared illicit because of the paramount importance of the right to equality, which was to become Article 15 in the 1950 Constitution. And that was something Babasaheb introduced and defended. So it prohibited any limitation based on the same criteria concerning access to shops, restaurants, hotels, public places, benefiting from any financial support by the state. And above all, you have, with Article 17, the abolition of untouchability. And also hard labor, any other form of servitude known as beggar, that was also declared illegal by Article 23. Here is Babasaheb arriving at the Parliament for the Constituent Assembly debate. This is the cover of a book I co-edited with Narendra Kumar. And here is Babasaheb with other members of the drafting committee. And the final step when he became Minister of Nehru, and more importantly, when he handed over a copy of the Constitution of India that he had so largely drafted himself. Now, that was a great achievement, but he knew that political democracy, something he had fought for so much, was not enough. And in the famous speech he gave in 1949, he says, because by then it was clear that on January 26, 1950, we are going to enter into a life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality, and in the social and economic life, we will have inequality. We must remove this contradiction at the earliest possible moment, or else those who suffer from inequality will blow up the structure of political democracy, which this assembly has so laboriously built. Wow, this is the most lucid assessment of the situation you can think of. He had certainly shifted from social work to political work, from party work to institutional work, for giving India a constitution that would give rights to the Dalits and everybody. But he knew that this democratic political arrangement would not deliver, would not make much of a difference if there was not more equality in society. So that's why he wanted to reform society. And the first thing for reforming society he promoted was the Hindu Code Bill. And that was something he strongly defended, saying we want a society, we want a Hindu community more egalitarian. And for that, we need the Hindu Code Bill. Rajendra Prasad and Patel were not in favor of that, because for them, Hindu traditions were sacrosanct. So Prasad says new concepts and new ideas are not only foreign to the Hindu law, but are susceptible of dividing every family. Well, yes, of course, when the male, when the father or the grandfather prevails in the family, there is unity, but this unity is hierarchical. And precisely, Babasaheb wanted to give rights to women and to make the family, the Hindu family, much more egalitarian. So the bill he had submitted resulted in a lot of opposition, and even the party president, the Congress president, Patabi Sitaramayyan, opposed the bill, and finally most of the local leaders, because they feared for their support base in the 52 elections, developed cold feet on the Hindu Code Bill. That was the parting on the ways. He lost and left because Nehru did not support him. So on 25 of September 1950, 1951, he could only have a portion of the Hindu Code Bill concerning marriage and divorce be adopted, but in a very diluted manner. And finally, Nehru did not want to oppose the party bosses, buried the matter, and he left 2 days later, resigning from the government. That's the transition towards the last strategy, to leave Hinduism as the only solution. When you've tried all the solutions, this is the only one that remains. Well, he had said that he would not die a Hindu. Let me cite this very important speech he made in 1935 at Yola. The disabilities we have suffered and the indignities we had to put up with were the result of our being the members of the Hindu community. Will it not be better for us to leave that fold and embrace a new faith that would give us equal status, a secure position, and rightful treatment? I advise you to sever your connection with Hinduism and to embrace any other religion. But in doing so, be careful in choosing the new faith and see that equality of treatment, status of and opportunities will be guaranteed to you unreservedly. Unfortunately, for me, I was born a Hindu, untouchable. It was beyond my power to prevent that. But I declare that it is within my power to refuse to live under ignoble and humiliating conditions. I solemnly assure you that I will not die a Hindu. Now, it took him a long time to find out what would be the best religion. It took him a long time, but he found it. And that was Buddhism. And he explains this very clearly. By remaining in the Hindu religion, nobody can prosper in any way because of the stratification in Hindu religion. It is fact that higher varnas and caste are benefiting. But what about the others? The varna system of Hindu religion is responsible for such a strange social structure. What improvement can take place from this? Prosperity can be achieved only in the Buddhist religion. Well, it's interesting to see that for him, Buddhism was democratic. So, in a sense, by converting to Buddhism, he deepened his quest for democracy, a real democracy, a democracy that is egalitarian, a democracy that also gives fraternity, and a democracy that, and a religion, that endows Dalits with an alternative non-Hindu entity. When you become Buddhist, you can't be located anymore in the caste system. You're not part of the system anymore. You're outside. And in the 22 Nagpur oath that he asked his followers to take and that he took himself, a lot of them, 20 of them at least, were directly pointed against Hinduism. The first ones: I shall not recognize Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh as gods, nor shall I worship them. I shall not recognize Ram and Krishna as gods, nor shall I worship them. I shall not recognize Gauri and Ganapati as gods, nor shall I worship them. I do not believe in the theory of incarnation of God. I do not consider Buddha as the incarnation of Vishnu. I shall not perform Shraddha, nor shall I give offerings to God. I shall not perform any religious rites through the agency of Brahmins. I thereby reject my old religion, Hinduism, which is detrimental to the prosperity of humankind, and which discriminates between man and which treats me as inferior. So this conversion was not only a religious decision, but also a political decision. And when he was interviewed soon after, he was asked, what is his social philosophy? And he said, my social philosophy is enshrined in 3 words: liberty, equality, and fraternity. And he said, I have not borrowed my philosophy from the French Revolution. My philosophy has roots in religion and not in political science. I have derived them from the teaching of my master, the Buddha. So it's a religion of brotherhood, of fraternity that he embraced. And I will stop with this photograph because this is, I think, the logical end of his trajectory that is really easy to summarize. and there is a logic behind, there is a consistency behind that is really remarkable. He studied the problems of caste as a scholar. He tried to reform society, and first of all, the Dalit caste groups. He continued by using politics as the best means, he said, for promoting the interest of the Dalits. You needed to have access to political power. Power helped him to change institutions, to draft the constitution, but for being really true to his objective to emancipate himself and Dalits from the caste system, to leave Hinduism and to embrace Buddhist had to be the ultimate decision. So step by step, you see Ambedkar exploring different avenues, different strategies. They are not mutually exclusive. They are cumulative. They make sense one vis-a-vis the other because they are steps on the same route for emancipation. And I'm now prepared to respond to the Q&A if there is any question, because I suppose we have 15 minutes, at least I have 15 minutes more.
Sir, you can continue if you have the time. Do you have?
Sorry?
Sir, you can continue with the presentation if you have the time. There is no worry about the time.
No, I prefer to move to the Q&A because it's much more interesting to have feedback and me to ask you questions. Why not?
Sure, sir, sure. I think we can head straight to the question and answer session, if that's all right with you. Okay, so now I will open the call for our audiences. They can unmute themselves, or they can.
I want to ask a question.
Yes, just a minute, please.
I want to ask a question. My name is Ajit.
Okay, go ahead. Please ask the question.
Thank you very much for the brilliant presentation, Professor Christophe Jaffrelot. Is there a anti-caste warrior like Ambedkar? Do you have a parallel activist in France, like anti-race warrior?
Well, the question does not arise because caste is not there anymore. Of course, we have class.
Anti-race or anti-class warrior.
Yeah, of course.
I know there's no caste.
This is different. Well, you still have, of course, anti-class warriors. You can't find someone of the caliber of Babasaheb Ambedkar. And it's more via organizations, via parties, via unions that you can see this fight. But it's a tough task. It's a difficult task. And frankly speaking, neoliberalism has started to prevail in such a way that these people are more on the defensive today.
Now, why I'm asking is, sorry for the second question. I know there's so many people who want to ask you. Why I'm asking is now UN or the world bodies have, I think they are recognizing caste discrimination with racial discrimination, and I'm sure France has a lot of racial discrimination. Even now, Roma tribe is still having problems in some parts of Europe. How is France and have been fighting against such discrimination? That's why I'm asking. I just wanted to know if there's any parallel icon that you have.
No, there is no similar icon, and in fact, the laws are based on the need for equality. So yes, it's discrimination on the basis of race, gender, which are the most important ones at the moment. Yeah.
Uh, I would like to request all the participants to please keep their questions short and crisp, because there might be many people who want to ask questions to sir. So yes, you can raise your digital hands and I would unmute them, and then you can ask your questions, or also you can type it in the chat box. Yes, please. Yes, Pranay, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, sorry, I got a little caught up in the application. Am I audible?
Yes, you're
Yeah.
audible.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Jaffrelot, for this wonderful presentation. It's always great to read and hear you. Anyways, I just quickly I wanted to get to this point that if we could comment a little bit on so when we talk about the move towards Buddhism, as you pointed out, it as a move in the religious sense and also in the political sense. But something that, like if you would want to comment on the historical reason behind the conversion towards Buddhism, right? For instance, in the Diksha event in 1956, Nagpur, I don't remember the Bhante's name, but the monk, one of the monks who was delivering the address, also sort of was present on the dais, also sort of said that, it's not a conversion. It's almost like going back to what we were. So there is this whole narrative of Buddhism was the true religion or was the historical religion of people, and now they are going back. I asked this question pertaining to the current Dalit Bahujan religious movement that is going on all over the India, and which has different shades to it. And often there is this claim that we are not converting to something new, but we are going back to our roots. So
Yeah.
how do you see the importance of that in this?
Well, that was Babasaheb Ambedkar's assessment and I would say assumption. He says, once upon a time, Dalits were Buddhist. And in fact, they became Dalits because they were Buddhist. They were victims of discrimination in response to their Buddhist faith. That's what he says in Buddha and his Dhamma. Such a great book. Yes, it's homecoming in a way. And this is why I always wonder, why have so few people followed him? Why is it so much exceptional for Dalits to convert to Buddhism even today? Because this is a call he gave decades ago, and if you go by the census, you still have a minuscule minority of Dalits who converted to Buddhism. This is really a mystery for me. And in fact, if I may ask a question to you, is how do you explain that to convert to Buddhism has not been more popular, conversion to Buddhism has not been more popular among Dalits?
Yes.
Maybe it's the fear of losing the reservation policy. That's why many of them.
No, because now you have reservations when you convert to Buddhism. VP Singh made the amendment that made it possible in 1990 to convert to Buddhism and to retain reservations.
Sir, not many of them know about it. Maybe you and I know, but not these poor Dalits and Adivasis. Even they most of them converted to Christianity, Adivasis of Northeast and some Adivasis of south of India. But not many of us, or at least I, did not know for the fear of not losing the reservation. I remained as a Hindu. But later when I realized people like me converted boldly. This is,
Sir,
I
there
don't
are
know.
multiple peoples. I would request you to please keep your answers short. Keep your questions short.
Sir, one thing that is not not the Dalits. The Dalits not wanted to go back because not Dalits at the earlier times. That it was the natives. native people wanted to go back. That is the correct term to be used, I think, because they are the aborigines of India, and so there was some religion for them, and so that is the apt word, that to be the natives, the aborigines of India. They had something, some religion, some belief, and actually they were the owners of the land as to Supreme Court. So that is the correct word, natives. Thank you, thank you.
Sir, I just want to make a comment, sir. I am Dr. Natesh from Bangalore. I look at this in three aspects. One is the class and the
Please, I would ask all I would ask all the participants to take turn in asking questions. Please give Professor Jaffrelot a chance to reply. I think Shanu has been raising his hands for quite a long time. Shanu, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question? Please keep it short and crisp because there are multiple people.
First of all, thank you for this session. Actually, I want to ask Jaffrelot sir. Sir, there is a contradiction between Ambedkar and Gandhi. That some people claims that Gandhi has proposed the reservation for the depressed class, or some scholars claim that Ambedkar has proposed the reservation policy for the Dalits. So, sir, what was the stand of Dr. Ambedkar about reservation?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Dr. Ambedkar was responsible for reservations to be introduced in the public sector, for the bureaucracy especially, and also in education. Now, the point vis-a-vis Mahatma Gandhi is that in 1932, when the British gave separate electorate to Dalits, Mahatma Gandhi started a fast unto death, saying that will result in separatism. And I want to retain the unity of the Dalits. Of course, he wanted to retain a caste-based unity. And Mahatma Gandhi suggested that instead of separate electorate, Dalits got reservations of seats. So it's a B plan for Ambedkar. Why? Because he knew that Dalits would never be in a majority in any constituency. So you reserve 15% of the constituencies for Dalit candidates. But in none of the constituencies of India, Dalits are in a position to vote for their candidate. The candidate that is elected because of non-Dalit votes. And that's exactly what Ambedkar did not want it to avoid. So you can't say Gandhi was progressive, he wanted reservations in parliament. No, it was regressive because Ambedkar wanted much more. A separate electorate would have meant that the Dalits elected in parliament would have been accountable to Dalit voters only. Whereas with the system we have today, reservations, Dalit MPs or MLAs are not accountable to Dalit voters because Dalit voters are always in a minority in each and every constituency. I hope you get my point.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Natesh, can you please unmute yourself and ask the question?
Sir, I am Dr. Natesh from Bangalore. I just have a question that it's very interesting how Dr. B.R. Ambedkar could propose such a voluminous constitution and convince people, which is, really a big task. So is there any references where we can read? I make it, it's very difficult to answer a question in a short time. So can you just name some reference books where we can just study and...
Well, the bibliography of my own book, the one you saw on the screen, for me is a select bibliography that gives what needs to be read. But there is nothing better than to read Babasaheb Ambedkar himself. Just read what he has written. Everything is there. It is so clear. It is so lucid. That's why I cite him at length, because that's the best source. Instead of reading about Ambedkar, read Ambedkar himself. Everything is there. And of course, you have different books. I would begin with Annihilation of Caste. Another one is What Congress and Mahatma Gandhi have done to untouchables. If you read these two books already, and the Buddha and his Dhamma, that's very good. And the untouchables in their ghetto. The ghetto question is very interesting. Yeah. Otherwise, the bibliography at the end of my book can help, I hope.
Sir, Dr. Sagar in the chat box asking, Babasaheb's fight was like an one-man army, but he could contribute significantly for the creation of a democratic system for the people in general and depressed class people, SCs in particular. His question is, what is the relevance of Ambedkarism in the present world? Why did UN accept Babasaheb?
Well, I think he is still very badly known. And one of the reasons is that the Indian elite people would take part in the international institutions never promote Ambedkar. Never. So for the international bureaucrats to know about him is not so easy. And to promote an Indian figure like him without the support of the Indian government is not so easy.
So Dr. Bhushan is asking, how do you see the role of post-independence judiciary in India in subverting the various Bahujan favoring policies? For example, denying reservation in private sector and denying reservation in promotion. What is your take?
Yeah. One of the big issues there is the elite social profile of the judiciary in India. There is clearly a need for more diversity in the judiciary. There are few places like the judiciary where there is no reservation. And without reservation, it's very difficult to make Dalits entering the profession and reaching that level. And the few Dalits who have become members of the Supreme Court have been co-opted in a way. So we are in a situation of Sanskritization in a way, but not Ambedkarism. You don't have, to my knowledge, Ambedkarite lawyers in high courts and the Supreme Court. Only reservations would give that, and it's not for tomorrow, unfortunately.
Varsha, can you please unmute yourself and ask the question? Varsha, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So my question was, if Professor Jaffrelot, if you could tell us, how did you come to Babasaheb Ambedkar? That's the first. And the second is, if we really need an independent global archive of Babasaheb Ambedkar in Paris, because the Americans have taken over. and how invested you would be in such a project?
Well, I started 25 years ago, a little bit more than that. I taught about Babasaheb Ambedkar for 3-4 years before writing a book in French. It was published in 2000. And then it was translated into English, and then Hindi, and then, as I said, other Indian languages, Tamil, Marathi. Is such a powerful intellectual. It was such a discovery. For me, the best analysis of Indian society is in Babasaheb Ambedkar's writings. Now, yes, to build an archive would be a great idea. Something that would preserve, for sure, his private papers. No, this is my main fear. My main fear is about the unpublished material. I used his correspondence, a fabulous source. Will that be preserved? I'm very much prepared to help to store securely Babasaheb Ambedkar's private papers in Paris. If you are interested in exfiltrating a copy of these letters, notes, annotated books, copies only. The originals need to stay in India. This is for Indians. This is something that needs to stay in India. But to make it accessible and to preserve it, copies of this in a place like Paris would be great.
We will have last 2 questions. So, Mr. Vishal, can you please unmute yourself? Please keep the question short and crisp.
Thank you, Moon, for allowing me to ask a question to Chris. Chris, very great presentation. Thank you very much. I am from Oxford, UK, and will be happy to see you around if you are coming to UK. So my question is relevant to your title today, is like the importance of Dr. Ambedkar today. And given in the present political situation, I think the Ambedkar paradigm is very much important. So in your opinion, how do you think that we can revive the Ambedkarite movement? And maybe to a further extent, if you can add a point to like how we can have another Ambedkar in India. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I met Kanshiram in 1989, and I think he was the closest approximate of what Babasaheb had been before. Because Kanshiram was truly dedicated to the Dalits. You know, this is not something you find in anybody else. People who sacrifice so much. Babasaheb Ambedkar could have been a very rich lawyer, not paying so much attention to the Dalits, but he preferred to fight for them. And Kanshiram was very similar. Cycling across the country, building BAMSAFE, so much sacrifice. This is the first, I mean, the main, I would say, foundational stone. You need dedication. Then you need a vision, but Babasaheb Ambedkar's vision continued to apply. And that's why I've listed all these strategies. Of course, you need a party. Of course, you need to make alliances with others like Kanshiram did for promoting the party. Of course, you need to convert out of Hinduism for emancipating yourself from the caste system. You know, Ambedkar's agenda has not been implemented. It is still there for everybody to take it up.
Sir, okay. Nivesh, can you please unmute yourself and ask the question?
Good evening, sir. Sir, myself Nivesh. Sir, first of all, I am very pleasure to listening to you. First time I am across to you from the book of Hindi translation of Ambedkar. That is your in slide also. And after I reading your frequently editorial in newspaper, in national newspaper, where you talk about social inclusion regarding things. But my question is regarding it, as you discuss the Ambedkar as a social work to political work, party work to institutional work, Hindu as a Buddhist. But why Ambedkar choose himself to go in a Buddhist religion? I can say why they don't choose to, yeah, you can say anyone, why need any religion? Why don't stop Ambedkar non-Hindu, yeah, choose Buddhism?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I don't think he looked at Buddhism as a religion. I think he looked at religion, at Buddhism as a philosophy that could give equality and liberty and fraternity. So that's what he said. So it's not based on the need to have life after death, to have a kind of what Karl Marx called the opium of the people. No, it's really a philosophy for reaching dignity, human dignity, again, brotherhood, fraternity. And certainly, he knew that India was not a secularized society. So to bring people who continued to believe in some religion to someone that they could consider as a religion was a good transition. But himself, I think, looked at Buddhism more as a philosophy than as a religion. Yeah.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us today. I would like my colleague Archish Mita to conclude the Online Ambedkar Intellectual Summit 2024. Archish Mita, can you unmute your mic? Just a second.
Thank you, Shitish. As we conclude the final day of 9-day summit, I extend my sincere appreciation to Mr. Christophe Jaffrelot and all the respected speakers who graced us with their presence at the Online Ambedkar Intellectual Summit 2024 as we celebrate Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's 133rd birth anniversary over this past 9 days, which included 17 online talks. We have dwelled into various dimensions of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's life and principle, celebrating his profound contribution to liberty, equality, and fraternity. I express my gratitude to all the speakers and participants whose insightful contributions have enriched this program. A special thank to the organizers, Mr. Mangesh Devale, the founder of B.R. Ambedkar International Foundation, and Mr. Yogesh Maitre, the founder of Panthers for Publication, for providing a platform that empowered young moderators to lead this event. I would also like to acknowledge the support from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Karwa Facebook page, which facilitated our live streaming efforts. Furthermore, I acknowledge the dedicated efforts of our moderators and the volunteers who work behind the scenes for this insightful sessions. A heartfelt thank you to all the participants for actively participating and contributing to this intellectually stimulating experience. I would like to inform all the participants that all the talks have been recorded and uploaded to the YouTube channel Bodhicharya under the playlist Ambedkar Intellectual Summit 2024. We look forward to seeing you soon again. Thank you once again for being the part of Ambedkar Intellectual Summit 2024 and contributing to its success. Jai Bhim.
Thank you very much, and congratulations for this great achievement.
Thank you so much,
Jai
sir.
Bhim.
Jai Bhim. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.